those of you who are presenting in this seminar probably have they want to have a job in development cooperation field and the international organization. So let me share about my path in the past. So I had many jobs, but I will just tell you about the jobs that relate to development field. So in 2010, when South Korea hosted this G20 Seoul Summit, I was there. I was working for the Secretariat for the G20 Summit in Seoul, and I was in the Economic Development Division, the team. So because it was an economic development team, I was working with people from mainly economists from the World Bank, IMF, the OECD, and UNDP. So I had a lot of conversations with them, and they suggested if you want to be an expert in the field, probably I should think about getting a PhD. So that's why I went to United States to major development economics. And my dissertation for PhD was about the impact of floods and typhoons on household welfare resilience. So I went to Vietnam, one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change, and stayed there for 6 months and talk to the local people and do the survey. So, and after I graduated, I obviously applied for research jobs, research positions. And one of the place I applied was the UN Research Institute. And luckily I got the job. So I was hired as a consultant for a project. And then, so I worked there for 2 years and I left the institute when the project ended. But there are different paths to get into the development cooperation. You can apply, you can do the volunteer, you can apply for internship, or you can apply to JPO, the Junior Professional Officer. But if you're Korean, you can also apply to KOICA's MCO, Multilateral Cooperation Officer, because the JPO has age limits, right? Because the age limits depends on the donor countries, but usually the applicant have to be under age of 32. So if you are already over 32 because you did your PhD, master's, you had a job, so I want to work in the international development field, but I'm over 32. Don't worry, you can apply for the MCO. So one of the questions I receive most from my students is if they need a PhD. The answer, I don't know, because what would you like to be? I mean, the answer really depends on what you really want to be. If you want to become a sector specialist and work for like specialized agencies like the WHO or WTO or FAO and FAO, well, you should probably get a degree that they like, right? If you're interested in health and HIV issues, then probably you can apply to the private philanthropists, right? The Bill and Melinda Gates. Or if you are interested in the refugee issues, you can apply to UNHCR, and probably you better think about getting a law degree because they like people with a law degree. Or if you like organizing conferences, you can apply to the Secretary of the UN. And if you want to, work in the field, then probably you can apply to UNHCR or the UN Food Program because you can be the first one in the field that responds to the natural disasters or crises. And probably you heard about Gavi often these days because the Gavi is one of the primary provider of vaccines to developing countries. So my answer is really depending on what you like to be. If you want to be a desk job researcher like me, then of course you will probably want to have a PhD unless you want to just stay as an assistant to the senior researchers. So depending on really what you like to do, the path will be really different. If you want to work in the field, I don't think that will require you to have a PhD. So think about it, what you really like to be. So UN is not just one UN. It has a lot of agencies under it. So they have very different specializations. So if you want to talk to me, you can talk to me after seminar, or there are many my students in the online, so come to me. So that's it. Thank you.
Anyone who would like to ask further questions about her lecture or some comment, discussion point will be welcome. Okay, please.
I would like to ask, what factors do you find the most necessary for the sustainable development? Is it democracy, respect for human rights, or rule of law? Which of the three, if you had to rank them in order, what would be your ranking? Because we know that not all the countries developed now had democracy in the past while they were developed, like Singapore. You cannot say that it's democracy, but it's a developed country. And Korea itself, until 1980, it wasn't a perfect democracy. Indeed, one miracle happened in Korea. So what would be your rankings?
Well, that's a very difficult question because, as I said, everything is interlinked. So we don't know whether democracy can lead to the different areas automatically because of the interesting relationship. It's really hard to rank it. I mean, depending on the country's context. If the country is already have peace and security and democracy already in the place, probably its priority is not democracy, but it could be like environment, like climate change adaptation or mitigation or the technologies or, seriously, depending on the context. That's why the country choose their priority areas and try to engage on those goals. If I have to rank it, probably peace and security, right? There should be no wars or no killings or no violence against women, right? There should be, as the American said, there should be freedom, right? To choose what you like to be, what you can be, right? So if I have to just choose one or two things, peace and security.
May I ask further questions?
Oh yes, go ahead.
Okay, so peace and security, the answer is for the first question. And now I want to ask about OECD's action.
OECD's action?
OECD's action plan. Apart from member countries, there are 7 participant countries, which includes Azerbaijan as well. So we are seeing that they are getting ready to accept Azerbaijan as OECD member. But the thing is, like, how likely do you think it's going to happen for these 7 countries to become OECD countries, which don't have sustainable economies?
OECD?
OECD DAC.
I think the professor
and additional 7 participants, which are like Romania, Bulgaria, Azerbaijan, and some Gulf countries. So how likely do you think it's going to happen? Because none of them have perfectly sustainable economies.
Can I ask you to answer that because you know more about OECD?
I have a question for you.
Well, I don't know because I'm not the person inside the OECD, so I don't quite know well about their classification, how they choose their member states. But I think it's very tricky to get in, and even if you think that your country does not have the growing economy, because the OECD, as some people said, is the party of rich countries. So if you think your country is not rich enough, probably, well, I don't want to say that. I mean, I'm really being careful. Yeah, because I don't know. Next month they may, accept you as a country member, and if I say no, then so I don't know. Seriously, I don't have the answers. So let's watch. Let's see. Let's wait how they decide.
My country has got growing economy, but it's not sustainable. I think that was my question. Let's assume that they accept it as a member, but their economy is not sustainable. What's going to happen in case of crisis or something?
I don't know, but South Korea joined OECD in the early 90s. But I mean, we joined OECD back in 2011, but as OECD, we became early 90s. 95, thank you. But we had the financial crisis in 1997. We had to borrow loans from the IMF, and we became recover the newspapers, the front pages.
So
But yes.
don't be hurried. The membership without sustainability is not very good. Okay. Maybe I would like to raise a question about SDGs from the public policy point of view. Well, you explained very well about the limit of MDG. So the MDG has 8 goals.
Limits and yes, 8 goals.
Yeah, and it was criticized too bureaucratic, to rationalist approach. So sustainable development goal has 17 goals, and it includes everyone, no one behind. It includes development issues and sustainability. So it includes everything.
You mean the MDGs?
No, sustainable.
Oh yes,
development.
yes.
So for me, for the public policy scholars, it's too many. And I don't know, I mean, it's difficult to concentrate. And you also mentioned about Korean sustainable development goal. So the Korean government is concentrated on sustainable development in Korea. But what about sustainable development goal in developing countries? And if you have pursue development and poverty reduction at the same time environmental sustainability, you cannot do anything because it's prohibiting. So for me, sometimes including everything is good, but sometimes you have a check and balance. So before sustainable development goal, we have a MDG, we have Rio issues. So we pursue each other, and then sometimes there is a conflict. But MDG puts their own goals, and sustainable Rio environmental issues go there. So we achieve something separately, but we have a conflict, but we also have a check and balance. So I don't know. I'd like to know your opinion whether this including everything is a good approach to achieve goals.
Well, I agree to your opinion that since we have too many goals, it's distracting us, right? It's kind of we're being distracted because of the too many goals. We don't know which one to focus, right? Well, I think there are many goals because some countries do not try to focus on their own priority only, leaving some important things like gender equality or the water issues aside. That's why I think the SDGs were designed as a reminder. You have to also pay attention to this area, this area, this area. I know you're doing good in this area, but you are neglecting this area. So I think it's more about the warning to countries who are not really paying attention to leaving some dimensions aside. So I know it could be distracting, but sometimes they make conflicts. But that's why the UN suggests we need to make sure that we have a coherent policies. That's why there should be communication between departments all the time to let each other know what they are focusing on, what they are doing. So things that Department of Environment does that does not provide any negative impact on what the Department of Education does. So the important point is we need to communicate. That's the point of for the public administration. The people working in the public administration, they need to, talk all the time. I'm sorry,
No problem.
that's all I can do.
Okay, you have another question?
Hello.
Here's another one.
I have to keep up my reputation. You know me. I always ask questions in the class.
I know your face.
So I have to continue to ask it. Professor, it was very nice presentation.
Thank you.
And we learned a lot. And for SDG, let me introduce myself. I am Ramesh Parajit from Nepal. And we are like the LDC country. We are trying to jump to development in 2022. We are in that path. When I look into SDG, I think I should start with one very short joke or story that's very much popular in my country. When a man is asked that if you are going to marry, when you are going to marry, and he will reply in Nepal that yeah, everything is ready now. Just I have to find the doll. Yeah. So for SDG also, I think that everything is there. Everything is there. But what is most lacking and most challenging is that they don't talk about how the developing countries are going to collect those amount of investment, because we severely lack it. In my country also there is like for SDG attainment of SDG goals by 2030, we need extra 55 billion dollar per year. So it's very huge gap. So what do you think? Why these 17 goals? It doesn't include the investment. What do you say? Investment criteria, something like that. Why are they keeping them? Because it's a major thing. Because everything is ready, but you don't have a goal, then how can you marry? Why are they leaving this investment or fund in the SDG? 17 goals. It should be like first goal.
The intention is that by promoting these things will create jobs for countries. Will come with the job creation, because that's the, as you said, that's where the money comes from, right? So if you know, for instance, in South Korea, we invest a lot in green growth, like smart green cities or technologies or smart infrastructure or smart vehicles, that it create new industries, right? It create new jobs. So through promoting environment at the same time, by saving the environment at the same time, is also creating money for those for people who are finding a job. So this is why the Sustainable Development Goals are there for, to improve the lives of people by creating jobs so they can get married, right? They can find a girl.
Yeah.
So the whole point is to improve our quality of life, and one of that thing is through creating jobs.
Great. I would like to get your comment about the 5 P's framework we talked about. In my view, peace affects the rest of the P's.
Peace affects what?
The rest of the P's.
Oh yes, yes.
Now, the Western powers, for example, they are the ones at the forefront of promoting the SDGs. They have given a lot of support, a lot of aid, especially for the African countries, developing countries. Now, my concern is these same Western powers, they are usually, you find them interfering with their very countries. Even without the blessing of the African Union, for example, they come to Libya, and all the problems you talked about, wars, famine, all diseases. Today, Libya is a noble area, and a lot of refugees. My country now has the largest number of refugees in the world because the neighboring countries are insecure. Now, it is one step forward, then back. Step forward and back. What's your opinion about that?
I think you already have the answer, because you said that peace affects everything, right? Peace, I think, is the gentleman in the back asked if I have to rank, if I have to choose the one thing that to be achieved soon. I said peace and security, and I think you already have the answer. Peace and security comes with the rest of the peace. So it's very difficult, because the crisis, the conflicts, and violation, the fragmentation, they are like a transboundary effects, right? Because the refugees usually go to the neighboring countries, and so yes, but I think peace could be the.
Well, she is not representing everyone. And also, I think in our world there is a paradox and contradiction. So someone from Korea, someone from US, talking about sustainable development or inclusive development, but at the same time there is also political power interfere with the domestic political issues and sometimes instigate conflict. So we have these complex situations and conflict, contradictory, but at the same time, with this situation, our effort about sustainable development goal is not hypocritical. We do our best, and there is someone else think otherwise. We live in the same world in Korea, in the US, so this is not easy. But I agree that it is only one good intention. Everyone is beautiful. There are people who really taking advantage of developing countries. There are people who work for the development issue, sustainable development story. So we need to have a firm understanding, not only rosy side or only black side. So, okay, we have two more questions, and that maybe after that too we will have a.
We can call it an end.
Yeah, because it's too much sometimes.
Okay.
So Dajang, you first.
Thank you very much for your insightful presentation. I really enjoyed it, and it is very interesting to note that we need to follow sustainable development goals. And I'd like to ask that how do you evaluate Ksdgs? Because as far as I know, Korean government tried to focus on 3P, which is people, prosperity, and peace.
Mhm.
So what do you think of Ksdgs in terms of effectiveness and efficiency?
Well, actually, I don't know whether I can evaluate the KSDG now because it has been only 2 years after the KSDG was created in 2019. But I don't know whether you heard the news about the G7 summit, but the outside leaders are complimenting that Korea is really doing well in the health dimension, and because we did really well in responding COVID pandemic, and we are really the front leader in green growth and environmental issues. We have invested a lot of money for the technology and smart cities and the hydrogen cars and the energy issues, and we are moving to solar energy and other renewable energy. So I think we have, I don't know if I'm the person to evaluate, but if I say things we do well, I agree with the leaders that we are doing good in health issues and we are doing good. We have a good healthcare system and we are doing good in environmental issues.
Thank you very much for your interesting talk. I just wanted to ask, in a way, following up on Robinson, to what extent is there danger in the future that agendas like this one could be used for authoritarian politics? That's one issue. Because you are in effect doing something that in other contexts is called greenwashing. Yeah, you are making an ordinary policy suddenly looking very progressive and good, and it comes with the UN approval. But of course, often the UN is doing bad. For example, in Syria right now, we have a starvation campaign that is led by the UN sanctions. Yeah, that is one issue. The other issue that I see as very dangerous is the Gates Foundation, for example, pretending to be a philanthropic enterprise, while at the same time in practice acting mostly as an investment fund. And of course, in terms of the investment interests of the Gates Foundation, it is useful if you are able to set a political agenda, which in turn is going to positively affect your further profit taking. So my question is, would it not be better if the Gates family would start to pay taxes, and states would send agendas in a classical manner to achieve public policy outcomes, rather than playing this shadow dancing or shadow boxing style of policy making as we see right now? And perhaps final point, I don't think from a development perspective we can say that setting this agenda for the vaccine rollout is addressing the prime concerns of developing countries. For example, to the best of my knowledge, in India, the main health issue is tuberculosis. It's certainly not COVID vaccines. But what the Gates Foundation...
Which country?
India.
India,
Yeah.
okay.
But what the Gates Foundation and other agenda setters want to do is to have this global experimental campaign with vaccines where there is no long-term experience whatsoever. And I see the danger that the vaccine agenda is, so to speak, dressed up into this MDC context in order to push it through against resistance.
Okay.
I think I may have sent a wrong message. I'm not saying the UN is doing perfect. UN is, everything UN does is good. I'm not. That's why probably one of the reasons I left UN. And I'm the one criticizing UN all the time in my classroom. So I'm not saying UN is doing great and we should follow everything the UN says. No, it's not my point. And there are many, as the professor said, there are, some people say the Gates Foundation is doing a business, not doing the humanitarian aid. I don't know. There are many criticisms, but I think this, at least, I want to believe. I think these are created with a good intention, at least. It's not about hurting people. It's not about hurting environment, or it's not hurting animals, or it's not hurting the poor people. I think I want to believe. As a global citizen and a person who worked at least in the UN, I want to believe these things were at least created with a good intention. And I think we have to go with that. We have to start with that intention then. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.